Welcome to the deep dive. If you're here, you're looking for the complete picture, distilled down from complex sources into pure, actionable knowledge. Today, we are undertaking, well, a monumental task, a deep dive into the transformation of Uttar Pradesh, India's most populous state.
It really is. We're not just looking at recent history either.
No, we are analyzing one of the most, I'd say, audacious economic visions ever set forth by a subnational entity.
It's a story of scale that is genuinely hard to grasp. We're talking about a region home to 240 million people.
240 million. It's worth pausing on that.
Absolutely. To put that in perspective, if UP were a country, it would be the fifth most populous in the world, ahead of Brazil and Pakistan.
Right.
Our source material provides a stunningly comprehensive analysis of the governance under Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath over the last 8 years. It tracks the state's seismic shift from, frankly, deep underdevelopment to becoming a major, visible engine of growth for the Indian economy.
And that's the first half of our deep dive today. Really analyzing that foundation built on security and infrastructure. But the second half, the future vision, that's what truly sets this deep dive apart, I think.
Definitely. We are unpacking the strategic roadmap for the next quarter century, the Viksit UP 2047 vision.
Which aims for a staggering, almost unbelievable $10 trillion economy by 2050.
10 trillion.
Yeah.
And the documents provide an unprecedentedly detailed blueprint for this future, articulated across what they call 5 interlocking pathways.
Right.
This vision requires deep structural change, complete integration of advanced technology, and, crucially, a radical universal overhaul of human capital through lifelong education. We'll get into that.
So our mission today is to unpack the reality of the last 8 years, the
Yes.
achievements that set the stage, the controversial methods that restored order, and then meticulously dissecting this detailed, tech-heavy blueprint.
A blueprint designed to turn UP into a global economic powerhouse, and perhaps position it as a potentially replicable template for large, populous developing regions across the entire global south.
So this is a deep dive into how political will, demographic scale, and, well, exponential technology are being combined.
Combined to achieve a goal that is, frankly, currently reserved only for the world's superpowers.
Okay, let's unpack this transformation. And we really have to start at the beginning, the starting line in 2017. The man at the center of this story is Yogi Adityanath, born Ajay Mohan Singh Bish in 1972.
Yes, and his political and spiritual journey is quite unique. From being the Mahant, or head priest of the influential Gorakhnath Math, to becoming the chief minister, it's a narrative thread you really can't separate from the governance model we see today.
And what stands out in the analysis of his tenure, as you mentioned, is this historical fact. He's the first chief minister in UP's history to serve 2 consecutive full terms.
That's huge in a state like UP. Historically, it's been characterized by perpetually shifting political sands, coalition instability. That continuity, achieved through strong electoral mandates, provided the essential stability required for any kind of long-term structural reform.
And his governance style. The source material describes it in pretty strong terms.
It does. It's described as a highly unusual blend, drawing on a strong ideological foundation, merging it with administrative centralization, and a fierce, unapologetic drive for economic revival.
But to truly appreciate the ambition of that $10 trillion target, we have to look into the abyss he inherited in 2017. UP wasn't just underdeveloped, it was, well, systematically broken.
Completely. It was universally classified as a Bimaru state, that acronym denoting severe underdevelopment, shared with states like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. It lagged across nearly every measurable social and economic indicator you could find.
And the foundational rot, as the sources stress, was law and order, or the lack thereof.
Exactly. The region had deteriorated into what was widely called a jungle raj, a state of affairs where criminal syndicates and powerful mafia networks operated with near total impunity, often enjoying direct political patronage.
Right, that political connection is key.
It meant that capital and investment simply refused to enter the state, regardless of any potential incentives offered. The risk was just too high.
And the specific crime data from 2016, just before he took over, paints a truly grim picture. We're talking over 4,800 murders, almost 13,000 rapes reported in a single year.
And that's just reported figures. Dacoity, armed banditry, and looting were endemic. The sources mention specific districts like Gazipur, Azamgarh, and Meerut as notorious hotspots, places where criminal gangs essentially acted as parallel governments, enforcing their own will.
This climate of pervasive insecurity wasn't just a social problem, was it? It was the primary economic barrier.
Absolutely. As one analysis pointed out, why would an industrialist invest billions in a factory if the local mafia could demand protection money, extort land, or jeopardize supply chains, often with, tacit political backing?
Makes sense.
The breakdown of law became an economic anchor, just dragging the entire state down.
And the economic stagnation mirrored the social chaos. The gross state domestic product, GSDP, back then, was a paltry 12.5 lakh crore, which translates to only about $150 billion at the time.
A tiny base for such a huge population. And critically, that low economic output was reflected directly in the average citizen's life. The per capita income stood at a meager $47,000.
Which was roughly half the national average.
Half, yeah. This deep economic hole showed that wealth creation was severely restricted, and poverty was structural. It wasn't just incidental.
And the industrial hurdles went far beyond crime, right? The sources detail a systemic failure of basic infrastructure and governance.
Oh, completely. We're talking severe, chronic, debilitating power outages, terrible road connectivity that made logistics impossibly expensive and slow, and widespread systemic corruption and bureaucratic lethargy. Just getting anything done was a challenge.
And the result was predictable. In that key metric of industrial confidence, the ease of doing business rankings, UP was stuck near the bottom.
A poor 14th nationally. Investors were actively discouraged. Add to this deep social fractures, entrenched caste and religious divisions, political nepotism, weak indicators in education and healthcare.
So this wasn't a state requiring minor policy tweaks.
Not at all. This required a complete systemic overhaul. When this chief minister took charge, UP really represented the most difficult test case for the Indian Union. The thinking was, if this massive, historically underperforming state could be fundamentally reformed, it would signal India's true capacity for internal transformation and sustained growth.
That analysis really highlights the magnitude of the challenge. The state needed not just capital, but a revolution in confidence and capacity.
Exactly. And that revolution, according to the government's narrative, started with a single non-negotiable principle.
Which was?
Law and order is the necessary foundation for all economic aspiration. Period.
Okay, so given that grim inheritance, the government's approach was immediate and very visible. They treated security as the precondition for economic growth.
And adopted a clear, non-negotiable, zero-tolerance policy against crime. That was the mantra from day one.
The strategy immediately translated into a highly muscular governance style, didn't it? Earning the chief minister that ubiquitous nickname, Bulldozer Baba.
Yes, that name, symbolizing direct, uncompromising action, it really became a brand. It signaled that the era of mafia impunity was over. Whether you agreed with the methods or not, the message was clear.
And the scale of these actions, as reported by the government and detailed in the sources, is pretty unprecedented for modern India. We're talking about over 180 hardened criminals eliminated in encounters.
Actions that, regardless of the significant controversy they generated, sent a clear and frankly terrifying message to organized crime networks.
And perhaps even more impactful economically was the financial strike, the seizure and demolition of mafia-linked properties.
Valued at over 3,500 crore, that's a huge sum. By destroying the physical and financial assets of these syndicates, the government argued it was dismantling the economic architecture that supported the jungle Raj.
And this approach seemed to resonate with a large part of the populace.
It did, especially with those who had suffered for decades under that criminal chaos. There was a palpable sense of relief for many.
And crucially, this uncompromising approach translated into a rapid, measurable decline in crime between 2016 and 2024. The numbers cited are truly startling.
The data shows a dramatic, steep fall, particularly in organized crime. Dacoity cases plummeted from 2,735 in 2016 to just 11 in 2024.
11 from over 2,700.
Exactly. Robberies fell drastically from nearly 6,000 cases to about 1,450. Murders also declined by approximately 45%.
That's substantial.
And there was focused effort, including the introduction of controversial anti-Romeo squads and dedicated women's helplines, which the government claims contributed to a reported 30–40% drop in crimes against women.
Now, beyond sheer enforcement, the police force itself underwent massive modernization efforts. The sources note the recruitment of over 1.5 lakh new police officers.
A huge investment in personnel, yeah. Alongside the establishment of specialized cybercrime units, recognizing, the shifting nature of organized crime towards the digital sphere.
And this technical modernization seems key.
It is. The UP police have adopted advanced technology, moving rapidly toward future-focused policing. We're talking AI-based surveillance networks in key cities, pervasive use of drones for monitoring, sophisticated facial recognition technology.
And predictive analytics.
Yes, predictive analytics used to map and target high-risk crime hotspots.
Yeah.
They're positioning themselves as one of India's most tech-enabled state police forces.
Okay, now this is where we absolutely have to pause and introduce the critical context as the sources demand. The speed and efficacy of these results, based on the official data, are undeniable, but the methods have drawn significant critique.
Absolutely. As an impartial deep dive, we must address the due process dilemma here. While the visible crime metrics improved dramatically, the governance style generated global concerns. Human rights groups, international observers, they've raised serious questions regarding the high number of encounters or alleged extrajudicial killings.
There's a fundamental tension there.
There is. Rapid deterrence versus the fundamental requirements of civil liberties and due process. That's the tightrope.
And there's also the issue of perception versus reality, or perhaps underreporting. An analysis we reviewed highlighted that while visible crime decreased, the climate of fear might have simply shifted.
That's a crucial point. Fear of police intimidation, the feeling that due process could be bypassed, might discourage some victims and their families from even filing complaints.
Especially in complex cases, maybe land disputes linked to powerful figures.
Exactly. Leading to potential underreporting. It's very difficult to measure accurately.
So this needs elaboration. When a state adopts this highly centralized law and order first philosophy and combines it with powerful tech like AI surveillance and predictive policing,
You need massive guardrails. The challenge is ensuring that the state authority, now perceived as powerful and swift, doesn't overreach. The long-term success and legitimacy of this model hinge on its capacity to evolve.
evolve from what to what?
From reactive muscular deterrence, which might be seen as necessary in the initial phase, to institutionalized rights-respecting justice systems. The sources acknowledge that this balance between security and liberty remains the biggest ethical and practical challenge for the current model.
So the immediate goal was stabilization, and the government argues that was achieved rapidly. But the challenge for the $10 trillion vision is ensuring the next phase encourages the kind of open, creative society needed for innovation.
Which often requires a less centralized, less fear-based environment. It's a fascinating duality to track as UP moves forward.
Okay, so once that foundation of order was arguably established, the sources show the economic engine really starting to roar to life. The shift from Bimaru to boom seems to have happened remarkably quickly.
It did. Positioning UP as India's second-largest state economy overall, an achievement that seemed incredibly distant only a decade ago.
This is where you see the payoff for that security stabilization, according to the plan's logic.
Right. The GSDP surged from that 12.5 lakh crore base in 2017 to over 25 lakh crore by 2024.
Doubling.
Effectively doubling.
Yeah.
And by the projected figures for 2025, we're talking about 32 lakh crore, or approximately 380 billion US dollars. That's nearly tripling the state economy in just 8 years.
And we have to emphasize, this wasn't just growth, it was structurally significant growth, right? The average annual growth rate was remarkable.
8.9%, consistently outpacing the national average. This momentum directly addressed the poverty crisis that had plagued the state for generations.
How did that translate into people's lives?
Well, the growth translated directly into better living standards, at least on average. Per capita income more than doubled, increasing from that low base of 47,000 in 2017 to around €1,000 by 2025.
Still low compared to some states, but a huge jump.
A huge jump relatively. Furthermore, targeted welfare schemes like housing assistance and free rations provided immediate relief. The government claims that over 3.43 crore people, that's over 34 million citizens, have been lifted out of multidimensional poverty.
And unemployment.
Unemployment figures also showed significant improvement, dropping from 6.2% down to an estimated 4.5% by 2025.
Now, the restoration of order clearly convinced investors, or at least gave them confidence, that the risk calculus had changed. The big headline event here was the 2023 Global Investor Summit.
Yes, that generated massive headlines. It secured investment commitments worth an incredible 40 lakh crore.
40 lakh crore. That's what, nearly $500 billion US dollars in commitments?
Roughly, yes. Now, this is a massive headline figure, and it needs critical context. Commitments aren't the same as actual investment on the ground.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to ask. We've seen in other emerging economies that realization rates often fall well below 50% of initial commitments. What mechanisms does the blueprint include, or what do the sources suggest, to ensure these commitments become real projects?
That's a crucial question. And the sources indicate the government is aware of this challenge. The governance model, using that centralized sort of CEO-like approach we discussed, focuses heavily on single window clearances, rapid land allocation, and establishing specific project monitoring groups.
Reporting directly to the top.
Reporting directly to the Chief Minister's office, yes. The idea is to eliminate the bureaucratic friction and delays that historically stalled projects for years, sometimes decades.
And does the visible infrastructure push help?
Absolutely. The commitment surge is backed by tangible infrastructure being built concurrently. Investors are seeing physical roads, power grids, airports being completed, which definitely reduces skepticism compared to just promises on paper.
And the types of investment commitments?
The sources emphasize these span high-value, future-focused sectors. Global giants in electronics, defense manufacturing, EV components, renewable energy, not just traditional low-value stuff.
That shift is reflected in the ease of doing business rankings, too.
Yes, a massive leap. From that dismal 14th position nationally up to 2nd position. This signals a deep structural reduction in bureaucratic hurdles and corruption, at least perceived by businesses.
And actual foreign direct investment, FDI, is that flowing in?
FDI inflows, though still relatively modest compared to global standards, or even states like Maharashtra or Gujarat, are projected to increase significantly, hitting over 10,000 crore annually by 2025. It shows real capital realization is starting to happen, though converting that full 40 lakh crore remains the big task.
Let's talk about that infrastructure push itself. It's staggering in scale. UP now holds India's longest expressway network.
6 operational, 11 more under construction. This isn't just about faster cars. It's a complete revolution in logistics for a landlocked state.
Right. How does that change the economics?
When logistics costs drop dramatically because of world-class roads, goods move faster, inventory costs decrease, profitability increases. It suddenly makes UP an attractive base for manufacturing and export, even without a port.
And air connectivity?
Expanded dramatically, from just a couple of functional airports to 11 now, including 4 international hubs, with 17 more planned. Essential for high-value, time-sensitive exports and, of course, tourism.
And the urban transport systems, that rapid rail project, is a big deal?
The ERRTS, yeah. India's first rapid rail transit system, linking Delhi to Meerut. It significantly integrates the National Capital Region in NCR with Western UP, effectively making it a viable economic extension of Delhi, attracting businesses and talent.
And basic services. Power was a huge issue historically.
Largely resolved, according to the data. Near universal rural electrification achieved 99% and, critically, implemented 24-hour reliable electricity supply in all district headquarters. That power stability is absolutely non-negotiable for the kind of advanced manufacturing they envision.
Okay, let's also look at the rural economy. It's not all about big industry. How did the government mobilize local decentralized production and creativity? Agriculture is still huge.
It is, and that's where the One District, One Product ODOP scheme comes in. This is quite an innovative approach. It's not just a government program. It's almost like an intellectual property and branding strategy for local economies.
How does it work?
It leverages the state's incredible economic diversity. Think Moradabad brassware, Padoi carpets, specific mango varieties from one district, unique textiles from another. ODOP identifies these local specialities, provides support for quality improvement, branding, marketing, and access to finance.
And turns them into export brands.
Exactly. Turns these local crafts and goods into recognizable, often geographically indicated, protected export brands.
Can you give us a specific example? You mentioned Padoi carpets.
Right, Padoi carpets. For ODOP, weavers often operated in fragmented, unregulated markets, exploited by middlemen earning low margins. The scheme provided training in modern designs, access to better raw materials, credit access, branding support under the Padoi carpet banner, and crucially, link them directly to international e-commerce platforms and export houses.
So it cuts out the middlemen.
Largely, yes. It helps them formalize, standardize quality, and dramatically increase their income. It transforms what might have been subsistence craft work into a formalized, globally competitive, higher-margin export business. This model, along with a focus on farmer cooperatives, crop insurance, and biofuel initiatives, is designed to modernize and secure rural livelihoods across the board.
Achieving this scale of economic and infrastructural overhaul, especially at that speed, requires a specific and, as we've noted, often controversial governance approach. The sources repeatedly identified the double-engine Sarkar model as key.
Right, the double-engine concept.
Yeah.
It essentially describes the synergy or the aim for synergy between the BJP-led state government in Lucknow and the BJP-led central government in Delhi.
How does that make a difference on the ground?
In a federal system like India's, this alignment is crucial because it can, in theory, eliminate administrative and political bottlenecks. Large-scale national welfare schemes like the free rations or housing programs and massive infrastructure financing from the center, like for expressways or railways, can be synchronized and accelerated.
Avoiding the delays you often see when state and central governments are opposed.
Exactly. Avoiding those decade-long delays that can plague projects in states with fractured or oppositional governments. It allows for faster planning, funding release, and implementation, at least ideally.
And the leadership style of the chief minister himself. It's often described in rather striking terms, fusing military precision, monastic discipline, and bureaucratic centralization.
That unique blend seems to define the administrative culture, according to observers. It implies zero tolerance for inefficiency, corruption, and political interference in administration.
How does that manifest?
He operates with a distinct, almost CEO-like directness. Utilizing technology for direct oversight reports, mentioned daily video conferences with senior officials across all districts, surprise inspections of projects in government offices.
Creating accountability.
That's the goal. This highly centralized approach is credited by proponents with fostering a sense of immediate accountability and efficiency. It also effectively dismantled the older transfer-raj politics.
Explain that.
Historically in UP, bureaucratic postings and transfers were often based on political whims, caste considerations, or corruption. The new administration aimed to make merit and performance the primary currency in the bureaucracy, providing stability for officials to actually implement long-term plans without fear of arbitrary removal.
Okay, so let's try and list the core repeatable strategies that define this governance model as presented in the sources, because these are the foundation upon which that $10 trillion future is supposedly being built.
All right. First, the non-negotiable law and order first principle. Security creates the stable environment needed for investment and daily life. That's the bedrock. Second, comprehensive administrative reform.
Yeah.
Using digitization aggressively to streamline public services, think land records, licenses, welfare delivery, implementing merit-based recruitment in government jobs, and strict anti-corruption measures to reduce friction for investors and citizens alike.
Third is clearly infrastructure.
Yes. Third, an aggressive, large-scale infrastructure push, backed by record public investment and central government support, focusing on those expressways, power, and air connectivity elements we discussed.
Fourth, the welfare aspect.
Fourth, inclusive welfare. This is the social safety net that provides stability and political support. Ensuring targeted welfare schemes, free rations, housing, toilets, direct cash transfers, bypass leakage through digital means, and reach rural families, immediately pulling millions out of acute poverty and providing a measure of social security.
And fifth, something unique to UP perhaps.
Fifth, actively leveraging the state's incredibly rich heritage, promoting cultural and spiritual tourism as an explicit economic driver, not just preserving sites, but modernizing the infrastructure around major religious centers like Ayodhya, Kashi, Varanasi, and Prayagraj on a massive scale.
The economic impact of blending heritage with modern development seems huge here. The sheer number of visitors is an economic phenomenon in itself.
It is. The 2019 Kumbh Mela, for example, drew an estimated 240 million pilgrims over several weeks. Managing that required unprecedented logistics and urban planning excellence, which itself became a kind of case study in the state's improved governance capacity.
And post-pandemic tourism numbers.
The state recorded 317 million domestic visitors in 2022. That's enormous. And with the completion of major projects, particularly the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya, the city is projected by analysts to surpass even Varanasi as India's top religious tourism hub.
Generating significant economic activity locally.
Billions in local commerce, hospitality, transport, and related services. It's seen as a way to inject new economic life into Purvanchal's previously stagnant economy, leveraging an existing cultural asset.
So by 2025, the picture is one of incredible momentum. India's second largest state economy, third fastest growing. But what are the immediate looming challenges, especially with state assembly elections coming up in 2027? What could threaten this momentum?
The sources are quite clear on the ongoing challenges. The rapid growth has definitely exposed strains in certain areas. Notably, the healthcare infrastructure, while improving, is still playing catch-up with the sheer population size and density. That remains a major task.
And the demographic pressure.
Huge. Managing the severe demographic pressures, providing quality education and meaningful jobs for the massive youth cohort entering the workforce every year is a constant, non-negotiable task. Failure there could undermine everything.
So the challenge now is sustainability.
Exactly. Proving that this initial surge, driven heavily by infrastructure and improved law and order, is sustainable. And critically, ensuring that the growth is genuinely reaching the lagging regions like Provincial and Bundelkhand, reducing disparities. That inclusion aspect is the exact focus of Pathway 5 and the long-term plan we're about to discuss.
Right. This transition brings us neatly to the future. Having stabilized, reformed, and accelerated growth in the short term, the state has now set its sights on this colossal long-term goal under the Viksit UP 2047 banner.
Viksit, meaning developed. So, developed UP by 2047, aligning with India's national goal for its centenary.
We are moving from fixing the present to architecting a very specific, very ambitious future.
The ambition is breathtaking, almost audacious, really. The immediate target mentioned is achieving a $1 trillion economy by 2027-28.
Which would already make UP on its own one of the largest economies globally if it were a nation.
Easily within the top 20. But it's the ultimate target U.S. $10 trillion economy by 2050 that elevates this planning to a different level entirely. It's thinking on a civilizational scale.
Let's put this $10 trillion number into brutal global perspective again. If UP achieves that by 2050, it would be, by today's standards, larger than the current GDP of Japan or Germany.
Assuming reasonable growth rates for the U.S. and China, it might be the third or fourth largest single economy in the world, starting from a projected base of around $380 billion in FY26. Achieving $10 trillion in about 24 years demands truly exponential growth, not linear.
That's the absolute pivot point, isn't it? This can't just be more of the same, but faster.
Exactly. The mathematical requirement for this goal is a sustained compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of roughly 14–15% real growth, year after year for over 2 decades.
Which is historically unprecedented for any economy of this size for such a long period.
Well above the sustainable historical norms, yes. It signals that this cannot possibly be achieved through incremental improvement or simply attracting more factories of the kind we see today.
So this isn't just acceleration, it's about fundamental structural transformation. It requires UP to effectively leapfrog entire stages of traditional industrial development.
Precisely. It mandates a rapid structural shift moving UP away from being predominantly agrarian and dominated by low-value informal manufacturing and services.
Towards what?
Towards a highly diversified, knowledge-driven, technology-infused, services-heavy, and high-value manufacturing economy. It requires a complete re-engineering of the state's economic DNA.
And that kind of leap requires a meticulously coordinated plan across multiple fronts, simultaneously: human capital, infrastructure, health, industry.
Absolutely. That's why the blueprint is structured around these 5 interlocking pathways. They're designed to address every dimension of transformation concurrently, ensuring that investments in one area, say education, immediately multiply the efficiency and potential in another, like Agri-Tech or advanced manufacturing.
And the overarching goal isn't just economic size.
No, the stated goal is to establish UP not just as an Indian leader, but as a blueprint. A model for rapid, large-scale, and importantly, inclusive development for other high-population, developing regions across the global south. It has aspirations beyond its borders.
Okay, let's introduce those 5 pathways that form the core strategic roadmap before we dive deeper into the mechanics of each one.
Right. The 5 pathways are:
smart and sustainable agriculture plus agri-tech leap. Basically, moving farming from subsistence to a high-value global market enterprise using tech.
Okay.
2, lifelong education and human capital acceleration. This is about creating a universally skilled, adaptable workforce ready for Industry 4.0 and whatever comes next, positioning UP as a skills hub.
3 sounds like the industrial component.
3, tech-driven manufacturing, services, and smart infrastructure, building the physical and digital platform for advanced industry, logistics, and digital services. 4, health, wellness, and lifelong well-being economy, turning population health and wellness itself into a major economic sector, leveraging both tech and tradition.
And finally, 5 is about inclusion.
5, inclusive growth, regional convergence, and global South integration. ensuring the benefits are shared, reducing those regional gaps we talked about, and exporting the UP model globally.
What's already clear, just from listing them, is that these pathways seem utterly dependent on two primary accelerators running through all of them.
Yes, deep technology integration and massive human capital development. They are the twin engines driving this $10 trillion ambition.
Okay, let's start our deep dive into the actual blueprint with Pathway 1, Smart and Sustainable Agriculture and the Agri-Tech Leap. Given that agriculture still employs the largest number of people in UP, this pathway feels absolutely critical for ensuring that growth is inclusive and reaches the rural heartland.
It is the foundation, both for social stability and for generating the rural income needed to drive demand. The vision here is really quite revolutionary for Indian agriculture. It's about transforming UP into a globally competitive, high-value food processing powerhouse.
What does that involve beyond just better seeds or more fertilizer?
It involves completely overhauling rural systems by integrating precision farming, advanced bioagriculture, modern logistics, and even circular economy principles like turning waste into energy.
Okay, I understand the concept of digital agriculture, precision farming. But how do you realistically implement high-tech tools like IoT sensors or drones spraying across millions of tiny, fragmented land holdings, which are so common in UP? That sounds like a massive logistical challenge.
It is a challenge, and the blueprint acknowledges that. The solution proposed isn't for every farmer to own their own drone or sensor array. That's not feasible. Instead, it focuses on creating shared service models and community-level data aggregation.
So how would that work practically?
The government, or perhaps private cooperatives or ag-tech startups encouraged by the government, would deploy localized networks of IoT soil sensors, automated weather stations, and maybe even satellite imagery analysis platforms. These would be managed centrally or regionally.
And the individual farmer, how do they access this?
The farmer accesses the hyper-localized data, the analysis, and the AI-driven advisories, things like precise irrigation needs, optimal fertilizer application, pest outbreak warnings, typically via a simple interface on their mobile phone, possibly through dedicated apps or even SMS alerts.
So farming becomes less about traditional intuition and more about interpreting data provided by a wider system.
Exactly. The core concept is the farm as platform. Imagine a statewide agricultural data platform that collects relevant data anonymously, maybe yield patterns, soil health metrics, water usage, weather forecasts. This platform then networks every farm, even the small 1-2 hectare holdings.
Networks them to what?
Networks them to critical support systems. Customized advisory services, access to credit based on predicted yields, tailored insurance products, direct links to buyers bypassing middlemen, and even services like drone-based pesticides spraying on demand for a fee.
That really changes the game for smallholders if it works.
Yeah.
What about the shift to high-value crops? Is that just about planting different things?
It's more strategic than that. It's the high-margin component. The plan mandates actively shifting acreage where agroclimatically suitable into specialty crops with higher market value.
Such as?
Organic produce, medicinal plants like ashwagandha or tulsi, which have global demand, high-value horticulture like exotic fruits or flowers, aquaculture in suitable areas, all explicitly linked to robust processing facilities and global supply chains.
So it requires building the whole value chain, not just growing the crop.
Precisely. They plan to foster a vibrant agri-tech startup ecosystem focused on areas like seed bioengineering for climate resilience, developing biofertilizers, and controlled environment agriculture, think vertical farms in peri-urban areas to supply fresh produce directly to cities with minimal spoilage and transport costs.
You mentioned sustainability earlier, specifically carbon farming. Can you unpack that concept and explain how it contributes to the $10 trillion economy goal? It sounds a bit abstract.
It's actually quite concrete and potentially very lucrative. Carbon farming involves using specific agricultural practices like minimum tillage, cover cropping, incorporating biochar, or agroforestry, where trees are integrated with crops that actively sequester more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it securely in the soil.
Okay, so it's good for the environment, reduces emissions, but how does it make money?
Crucially, the blueprint explicitly links these sustainable practices to global carbon markets. This means farmers or farmer cooperatives who adopt certified carbon sequestering practices can earn carbon credits for the amount of CO2 they remove from the atmosphere.
And these credits have value?
Yes, these credits can be sold on international or domestic markets to companies or countries looking to offset their own emissions. This monetizes environmental stewardship. It provides a powerful financial incentive for farmers to adopt green practices, which also tend to improve long-term soil health and resilience, boosting yields. It creates a whole new, potentially significant revenue stream for rural UP, aiming to make the state a major carbon credit generator for India.
Okay, so the ultimate impact of Pathway 1 then is trying to decouple rural income from just the volatile prices of basic commodities like wheat or rice.
Correct. The expected productivity upsurge from technology and better practices, the plan aims for 2 to 3 times current levels in many crops, combined with the shift to higher value products and new income streams like carbon credits, is projected to double or triple the value added per hectare within 10 to 15 years.
And the long-term contribution.
By 2050, the plan envisions the integrated agriculture, food processing, and ag-tech segment alone contributing over $500 billion annually to UP's economy. It would feed the massive domestic demand, reduce import dependency for India, and serve as a crucial export pillar.
Now let's pivot to Pathway 2, lifelong education and human capital acceleration. The sources consistently argue this is the true engine of the $10 trillion transformation. Why is this investment in people framed as so much more critical than, say, building more expressways or factories?
Because ultimately, without a universally capable, adaptable human capital base, all the advanced technology, all the shiny infrastructure remains inert or underutilized. You can import the most sophisticated AI system or robotic assembly line. But if you don't have local engineers who can install, maintain, and adapt it, data scientists who can interpret the outputs and refine the algorithms, managers who can innovate new business models using it, and a general workforce comfortable interacting with it, then it's just an expensive foreign import that doesn't generate sustainable local value or jobs. The vision is to create an Industry 4.0 ready workforce across all age groups and position UP not just as a user of skills, but as a global skills hub.
How does the plan propose to ensure foundational education is modernized effectively and actually reaches the most remote villages in, say, eastern UP or Bundelkhand? That's always been a challenge.
The foundational step is universalizing quality early childhood education and then drastically improving primary and secondary schooling with a heavy focus on those lagging districts you mentioned. The how is largely through technology enablement, equipping virtually all schools with basic digital infrastructure, reliable internet, devices, digital classrooms, introducing AI-powered tutors that can offer personalized learning support tailored to each student's pace and needs, promoting blended learning models that combine traditional teaching with interactive digital content, available in multiple local languages.
What about the teachers? Technology alone isn't enough.
Absolutely critical. The plan includes investing heavily in upskilling teachers, creating digital pedagogy platforms for continuous professional development, and establishing mentorship networks to share best practices and ensure a standardized high quality of learning across the vast, diverse state.
Okay, that's foundational. But for the current workforce and those leaving school now, vocational training is essential to transition them into these planned high-value sectors.
Yeah.
How does the plan ensure these skills actually match what industry needs tomorrow, not what it needed yesterday? The pace of change is so fast.
That's addressed through 2 key mechanisms. First, the establishment of high-quality institutes of technology and skills in every single district. Critically, the curriculum in these institutes is meant to be highly dynamic and directly tailored to the specific needs of the local economy.
So an institute near an agro-processing cluster would focus on food tech and logistics, while one near a defense corridor would focus on aerospace manufacturing skills.
Precisely. Hyper-localized and demand-driven. The second key innovation mentioned is adopting the dual system education model, drawing inspiration from successful systems like Germany's.
Can you explain the dual system model in more detail? How does it differ from traditional vocational training?
It moves away from purely classroom-based theoretical vocational degrees. In a true dual system, students spend roughly half their time in the classroom learning the core theory and principles of their chosen trade. But the other half is spent in structured, paid, on-the-job apprenticeships within local companies, factories, or workshops.
Learning by doing, essentially.
Exactly. Learning by doing, under supervision, using the actual equipment and processes they'll encounter in the workplace. This ensures students graduate not just with a certificate, but with immediate, practical, relevant experience and a job-ready skill set in high-demand fields like robotics maintenance, data analytics, biotech lab assistance, advanced welding, or EV battery management. It massively reduces the risk of skill mismatch and improves employability straight out of training.
That sounds effective. Now, what about the lifelong aspect? People already in the workforce whose jobs might be automated or change radically.
That's addressed by the proposed UP Skills Cloud. This is envisioned as a massive, statewide digital platform accessible to everyone.
What would it offer?
It would offer a huge menu of constantly updated learning opportunities. Short-term, verifiable micro-credentials in specific skills, like coding in Python or operating a certain type of medical equipment. Intensive boot camps for rapid career transitions, for example, moving from traditional retail to digital marketing, and modular upskilling courses.
Who is this primarily targeted at?
It's particularly targeted at mid-career professionals who need to pivot due to automation, and also explicitly at vulnerable groups like women seeking to re-enter the workforce, or disadvantaged youth who often cannot commit to multi-year full-time education due to economic pressures.
You mentioned women specifically. Are there targets?
Yes. The plan specifically targets doubling female labor force participation in select districts as a pilot, aiming to lift the statewide average significantly, maybe towards 40% by 2030, up from much lower levels currently. The Skills Cloud is seen as key to this, enabling women, especially in rural areas, to acquire skills for flexible, remote, or digitally enabled work opportunities.
And beyond skills, what about higher-level research and innovation? Is UP aiming to create knowledge, not just apply it?
Definitely. The plan includes actively seeking partnerships with top global universities and tech companies to establish specialized research and innovation ecosystems and centers of excellence, COEs, in strategic areas. Things like AI for governance, bioenergy research, advanced material science, or water resource management. The goal is to attract top research talent, reverse the historical brain drain from UP, and eventually turn the state into a net generator of intellectual property and innovation.
So the ultimate payoff of Pathway 2 isn't just a trained workforce, but a genuine competitive edge in global labor and knowledge markets.
Absolutely. The expected impact is a tremendous surge in overall workforce productivity, a reduction in structural unemployment, and that crucial increase in female participation. By 2040, UP aims to be graduating over 1 million highly skilled professionals annually across various fields. The ambition is to position the state as a net skills exporter, supplying talent not just to other Indian states, but increasingly to the global south and even developed economies facing skills shortages.
So human capital itself becomes a major economic pillar.
Exactly. By 2050, human capital and the innovation it drives is projected to become the state's second major economic pillar after manufacturing services, providing the essential fuel for sustaining that hypergrowth required to even approach the $10 trillion target.
Okay, let's move to Pathway 3. Tech-driven manufacturing, services, and smart infrastructure. So if Pathway 1 provides the food security and raw materials, and Pathway 2 provides the brainpower, Pathway 3 is about building the actual physical and digital platform, the factories, the logistics, the data centers.
Right. This is where UP aims for that structural leapfrogging we talked about. The realization is that UP cannot realistically compete with established East Asian economies or even other Indian states purely on traditional low-wage, low-value manufacturing. It's too late for that model.
So it has to aim higher from the start.
Exactly. It must move directly into advanced, high-value, often automated manufacturing niches. The plan specifically targets expanding existing corridors and creating new hubs for things like electronics design and assembly, defense and aerospace components, the full electric vehicle EV ecosystem from batteries to components to assembly, and all of this needs to be supported by genuinely world-class infrastructure.
We've seen the start of this with the existing defense industrial corridor. How does the 2050 blueprint propose to accelerate and expand this concept beyond just defense?
The plan is to transform these corridors, like the one linking Aligarh, Kanpur, Agra, Lucknow, Hansi, and Chitrakoot, into complete integrated ecosystems, not just isolated factories.
What does integrated ecosystem mean in practice?
It means attracting not just the final assemblers, the big global original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, but also their critical Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers. It means ensuring these hubs have highly efficient, dedicated logistics connections, rail spurs, expressway access, abundant, reliable, and increasingly green power. expedited regulatory processes, and land acquisition. And very importantly, strong linkages to the skills institutes from Pathway 2, ensuring a ready supply of trained workers.
And integration with Pathway 1, too.
Yes, ideally. For example, locating food processing parks from P1 close to the logistics hubs, P3, that serve the manufacturing corridors, or ensuring the EV component manufacturing hubs, P3, are near the new green energy generation zones, also P3, and have access to minerals processed perhaps through partnerships linked to P1 activities. The focus is on developing cluster-based, resilient domestic supply chains, minimizing the reliance on importing every single critical component.
Okay, and the smart urban design component is massive here. What does smart urban and mobility infrastructure actually entail, beyond just more expressways or metro lines?
It's about using data and technology to make the entire system more efficient, productive, and livable. On the mobility front, it involves dedicated freight rail corridors to get trucks off the roads for long distances, massive AI-optimized multimodal logistics hubs that seamlessly integrate rail, road, and potentially air cargo.
And within the cities themselves.
Within the designated smart cities or new industrial townships, they are deploying pervasive IoT infrastructure sensors, monitoring traffic flow, energy consumption, water usage, air quality, using digital twins for urban planning and infrastructure management, and promoting integrated public transport solutions linking the RRTS and metros with feeder networks of electric buses and shared last-mile EVs.
Okay, you mentioned digital twins. Can you explain that concept? It sounds highly futuristic. How would UP use that?
It is quite advanced, but becoming more common. A digital twin is essentially a dynamic virtual replica of a physical asset or system. It could be a single machine, a factory floor, an energy grid, or even an entire city.
How does it work?
It uses real-time data streamed from sensors and IoT devices on the physical asset to constantly update the virtual model. This allows operators or planners to monitor performance remotely, simulate changes, predict failures, and optimize operations in the virtual world before implementing changes in the real world.
So for urban planning in UP?
For urban planning, officials could use a digital twin of, say, Lucknow to model the impact of a new metro line on traffic congestion before building it, or simulate how different building regulations would affect energy consumption across a neighborhood, or optimize waste collection routes based on real-time data from smart bins. For infrastructure projects, it allows for predictive maintenance fixing a bridge before it develops critical faults, based on sensor data fed into the twin. It minimizes costly errors and optimizes resource use dramatically over the long term.
That's fascinating. Now, on the digital services front, IT, back office work, data centers, how does UP plan to attract global investment in this area away from established Indian hubs like Bengaluru or Hyderabad?
The strategy seems twofold. Firstly, leveraging lower operational costs, particularly real estate and potentially salaries, compared to the Tier 1 megacities. Secondly, banking on the success of Pathway 2 to provide a large, rapidly scaling pool of skilled digital talent.
Where would these hubs be located?
They are aggressively promoting the development of modern IT and IT-enabled services, IT's parks, business processing centers, and fintech hubs in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, places like Lucknow, Kanpur, Noida, Greater Noida already, but also expanding to Gorakhpur, Varanasi, Prayagraj, Meerut. The idea is to offer global companies a high-quality, lower-cost alternative with good connectivity and a reliable power supply.
And data centers. That's a huge growth area.
Yes, the state aims to attract significant investment in building large-scale, energy-efficient green data centers, cloud service facilities, and specialized AI research labs, positioning UP as a critical node not just for serving the Indian market, but potentially as a data hub for surrounding regions, leveraging its large domestic market and improving international connectivity.
All of this, the factories, the data centers, the smart cities, requires absolutely massive amounts of reliable and preferably clean energy.
Absolutely non-negotiable. The plan mandates a radical shift toward renewable and green infrastructure. This isn't just token projects. It means massive scale deployment of solar parks and wind farms across the state.
Beyond solar and wind.
Exploring and developing hydrogen and green ammonia corridors, possibly leveraging the high biomass availability from the agricultural sector, linking back to P1, to produce green hydrogen. And crucially, investing heavily in smart grids that can manage fluctuating renewable energy sources, along with advanced battery storage solutions to ensure that critical 347 power stability needed for advanced manufacturing and data centers.
So the net impact of Pathway 3 is clearly aimed at boosting high-value domestic production and especially exports.
Correct. The target is for manufacturing and high-end services to become the dominant contributors to the state GSDP by 2050. For logistics costs, currently a major drag, to fall into the globally competitive range, say, less than 8% of shipment value compared to much higher figures now. And the ultimate metric for merchandise and services exports originating from UP to exceed US $100 billion annually by 2040, transitioning the state into a high-value, knowledge-based industrial and service economy.
Now for Pathway 4. Health, wellness, and the lifelong well-being economy. This one feels arguably the most holistic, maybe the most interesting pillar. It reframes health not just as a social expenditure or a cost, but as a productive asset and an economic sector in its own right.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is the integrated approach. The core idea is that a healthier population is a more productive population. Better health translates directly into higher labor force participation, lower absenteeism, higher cognitive function, and reduced economic losses from preventable illnesses. So investing in health has a direct economic multiplier.
But it goes beyond just reducing costs, right? The vision positions UP as a destination.
Yes, it positions UP as a potential global destination for wellness tourism, leveraging its cultural heritage, as a center for preventive health innovation using technology, as a hub for AI-powered diagnostics, and even as a significant player in biopharma manufacturing.
How is this ambitious health vision delivered, especially given the state's historical challenges with overburdened, particularly rural, health infrastructure?
The delivery model relies heavily on technology to bridge the gaps and improve efficiency. The plan talks about deploying a preventive health ecosystem. A core part of this is establishing smart wellness villages or upgrading existing primary health centers with tech.
What makes a wellness village smart?
It means using technology-enabled systems widely. Widespread use of telemedicine consultations to connect rural patients with specialists in urban centers or even anywhere in the world. Deploying wearable sensors or home monitoring kits for patients with chronic diseases like diabetes or hypertension, allowing for continuous monitoring and early intervention. And using AI-powered diagnostic tools, maybe analyzing medical images like X-rays or retinal scans, or identifying patterns in community health data to flag potential epidemics or high-risk individuals instantly.
And how does the cultural heritage aspect blend with modern medicine here?
It's a deliberate strategy to monetize the state's deep cultural roots and wellness traditions. They are actively promoting better nutrition, yoga, meditation, and traditional systems like Ayurveda. The plan involves creating integrated spiritual wellness clusters in places with strong historical connections, like Ayodhya, Varanasi, or potentially Rishikesh near the state border.
Aiming for tourism.
Exactly. Linking high-end tourism facilities with authentic wellness treatments, yoga retreats, and Ayurvedic centers. This aims to attract both affluent domestic tourists and international visitors seeking preventive health, rejuvenation, and spiritual experiences, creating a high-value service industry.
And on the manufacturing side of health, what's the plan for producing medicines or medical devices within UP?
This is a major focus for industrial development under this pathway. The strategy involves creating specialized pharma parks and medical device manufacturing parks, offering dedicated infrastructure and incentives. Alongside this, building biotech clusters, potentially linked to research universities.
What kind of production are they aiming for?
Attracting investment in generic drug manufacturing, but also moving up the value chain into areas like vaccine production, biosimilars, genomics research, and advanced diagnostic kit manufacturing. The goal is to create a recognized made-in-UP brand for medical equipment and biotech products, capable of serving not just India's vast domestic market, but also exporting to the global south, where affordable, quality healthcare products are desperately needed.
Technology must be key to ensuring these health services reach everyone, achieving that universal goal, rather than just creating pockets of urban excellence.
It's positioned as the great equalizer. The pursuit of universal health coverage relies heavily on digital tools. The plan includes implementing mandatory, interoperable digital health records for every citizen, allowing seamless data flow between primary care centers, specialists, and hospitals. Using AI-driven triaging systems in clinics and hospitals to efficiently manage patient loads, prioritizing urgent cases based on algorithms analyzing symptoms and vital signs collected remotely or via wearables.
So Pathway 4 isn't just about improving health outcomes for citizens. It's about generating significant economic revenue from a healthier, more productive population and building a globally competitive health industry.
Exactly. The cumulative impact is envisioned as substantial. The entire health and wellness sector, including medical tourism, pharma biotech manufacturing, digital health services, and wellness centers, is targeted to contribute something like 8–10% of UP's total GSDP by 2050. That could potentially represent close to a $1 trillion sector in its own right, fueled by domestic demand, exports, and the productivity gains across all other pathways from a healthier workforce.
Okay, this brings us to the final pathway, Pathway 5. Inclusive growth, regional convergence, and global South integration. You could argue that without this one succeeding, the entire $10 trillion vision, even if achieved in aggregate, would likely fail the vast majority of UP's 240 million citizens. And that could create massive instability.
This is absolutely the critical political and social pathway. It's about ensuring that the exponential growth generated by the other four pathways is stable, sustainable, and crucially widespread. The core challenge it addresses head-on is tackling those vast historical regional disparities within UP.
Right. Western UP, being closer to Delhi and more industrialized, is miles ahead of Purvanchal, Eastern UP, and the Bundelkhand region in the south.
Exactly. Purvanchal and Bundelkhand suffer from a legacy of poor infrastructure, deep agrarian distress, often water scarcity, lower literacy rates, and fewer non-farm job opportunities. The vision explicitly states that aggressive, targeted investment is needed in these lagging regions to achieve something approaching infrastructure and opportunity parity with the West. Leaving them behind is not an option, politically or economically.
How does the plan specifically propose to tackle these deep regional disparities? Is it just about building more roads in Bundelkhand?
It's more strategic than just generic infrastructure, though that's part of it. It requires creating focused, multi-sector investment hubs tailored to the specific strengths and weaknesses of each region.
For example,
For Bundelkhand, which suffers from chronic water stress, the focus would be on large-scale, sustainable irrigation projects, maybe reviving traditional water bodies, implementing micro-irrigation extensively, perhaps even the controversial river-linking projects if feasible, promoting water-efficient specialty crops, linking to P1, and leveraging the large tracts of relatively open, less fertile land for sectors like defense and aerospace manufacturing, part of the existing corridor cuts through here, or large-scale solar farms, P3.
and for Purvanchal, which is densely populated and largely agrarian.
For Purvanchal, the focus would be different, leveraging the large population by investing heavily in labor-intensive agri-processing industries, P1, developing the services sector, particularly ITITES and back-office operations in Tier 2 cities like Gorakhpur and Varanasi, P3, and maximizing the potential of cultural and religious tourism centered around Ayodhya and Kashi, P4, creating significant non-agrarian job growth close to where people live.
So the investment has to be strategically weighted.
Yes, strategically weighted towards achieving parity and foundational elements like reliable power, universal rural broadband connectivity, clean drinking water access, and establishing those high-quality vocational training centers, from P2, in every district within these lagging regions. The goal stated is to reduce the regional GDP gaps significantly, maybe by 20% by 2030, as an interim target.
And what about addressing social inclusion more broadly, particularly the issue of very low female labor force participation, which holds back the economy significantly? What concrete mechanisms go beyond just general statements about empowerment or credit access?
The sources do outline some concrete policy mechanisms being considered or piloted. First, setting specific, measurable targets and potentially even quotas for enrolling women in the new vocational training centers, P2, particularly targeting high-demand digital skills, health tech roles, and agri-tech fields that might offer more flexible work arrangements compatible with family responsibilities. Second, enforcing strict safety mandates, providing secure transportation options, and potentially childcare support facilities within the new industrial parks and manufacturing hubs, P3, to make factory work more accessible and attractive for women. Third, really leveraging the UP Skills Cloud, P2, to offer micro-credentialing programs specifically designed for digital services, jobs like remote customer support, data annotation for AI, online tutoring that can often be performed remotely from home, overcoming mobility constraints faced by many rural women.
Okay, the source material also emphasizes UP's potential role on the world stage, that global South integration aspect. Why should UP, itself a developing subnational entity, aim to be a model and even an exporter of expertise to other developing nations? What's the strategic rationale?
There are a few layers to it. Firstly, it's about building soft power and diplomatic influence for UP and India. Secondly, it's about market creation. if UP can successfully demonstrate scalable solutions for challenges common across the global south.
Like what kind of challenges?
Managing massive populations, rapidly urbanizing while keeping rural areas viable, tackling water scarcity through technology, delivering digital governance at scale, uplifting marginalized communities through targeted schemes like ODOP. These are precisely the challenges faced by many large states and nations in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America.
So UP becomes a living laboratory.
It's exactly a living laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
The plan is to position UP as an export hub, not just for its goods, agri-products, manufactured items from P3 and services, wellness tourism, P4, IT services, P3, but critically for its expertise, technology platforms, and training programs.
How would that work?
They talk about establishing a dedicated Global South Innovation Hub in UP. This would host exchange programs, train government officials and entrepreneurs from other developing countries and UP's successful models, perhaps showcasing their digital governance platforms, the ODOP implementation strategy, or their Agri-Tech integration techniques. It's about fostering South-South investment, technology transfer, and creating markets for UP's homegrown solutions.
So exporting its development model is seen as a core component of its own economic strategy and soft power projection.
Absolutely. It secures long-term global market access for UP's exports, P3, potentially locks in preferential trade relationships, and establishes UP, and by extension India, as a thought leader in large-scale, tech-enabled, inclusive development. This is seen as essential for long-term global relevance and economic security in a multipolar world.
And one final point on inclusion. How does the plan propose to counter the relentless rural-to-urban migration that often overwhelms infrastructure and creates slums in rapidly developing economies?
By trying to achieve a more balanced urban-rural integration. The goal isn't necessarily to stop migration entirely, as some level is natural, but to make it more a matter of choice than desperation and potentially even encourage some reverse migration for a better quality of life. The main strategy is to create a seamless network of smart villages or urban centers linked effectively to nearby larger towns and smart cities via high-speed digital connectivity, essential, and integrated physical transport. By bringing high-quality education and vocational training, P2, decentralized manufacturing opportunities, P, think small assembly units or components linked to larger hubs, high-value agri-processing facilities, P1, and reliable digital services into these rural or semi-urban centers, the blueprint aims to make rural life more economically productive and professionally fulfilling, reducing the need for people to abandon their homes and communities solely for economic survival. So just to summarize the interdependence again, all 5 pathways are deeply interwoven and mutually reinforcing. Education, P2, provides the specialized workforce needed to operate the autonomous factories, P3, and interpret the data generated by the Agri-Tech platforms, P1. The resulting healthier, more productive population, P4, generates the economic dynamism and tax revenue required for the scale. And the deliberate focus on regional and social inclusion, P5, aims to ensure that the explosive growth is politically stable and socially accepted across the diverse state. It's a complex, integrated system.
Okay, let's talk briefly about the rollout timeline. This is a 25-year vision. How quickly is this massive blueprint actually being implemented? Is it phased?
Yes. The sequencing is critical and outlined in stages. Short term, roughly 2025-2030. This phase is about laying the remaining foundations. Building out the core digital infrastructure, statewide 5G, fiber optic networks, initial data centers, launching pilot projects for the tech clusters, EVs, AI labs, securing land and starting construction for the major new industrial corridors, and critically, scaling up the new vocational training centers and getting the UP Skills Cloud, P2, fully operational and widely adopted.
So build the platform first.
Build the platform. Medium term, roughly 2030-2040. This is projected as the massive scaling phase. The industrial corridors and export processing zones become fully operational and attract major anchor investments. Green energy generation scales up rapidly to meet demand. Regional convergence efforts in Provençal and Bundelkhand should start showing measurable results in terms of income and infrastructure parity. And the health wellness tourism sector, P4, matures into a significant revenue generator.
And the final decade.
Long term, 2040-2050. The final phase aims for full economic maturity and deep global integration. Manufacturing and services should dominate the GSDP, Agro-value chains are fully modernized and globally competitive. And crucially, the state achieves the requisite density of high-skilled human capital and innovation capacity needed to sustain the momentum and actually realize that $10 trillion target, becoming a globally significant economic pole.
This hyper-ambitious timeline, relying on so many things going right simultaneously, inevitably comes with immense risks. What are the key pitfalls identified in the source material that could derail this entire grand plan?
The sources are quite candid about the major constraints and risks. The first, and perhaps most politically sensitive, is regional disparity. If the infrastructure, investment, and opportunity gap between Western UP and the lagging regions of provincial Bundelkhand persists or widens despite the plans, it could create social unrest, political instability, and fundamentally underutilize a massive portion of the state's potential workforce. Failure on Pathway 5 could cripple the whole vision.
What else? Resources.
Second are severe resource constraints. Specifically, water scarcity is flagged as a huge risk, particularly for Bundelkhand, but increasingly across the state due to climate change and over-extraction. Intensified agriculture, P1, even with smart techniques, and increased industrial and urban water demand, P3, require massive, sustainable, and perhaps politically difficult water management solutions otherwise. Growth could literally run dry. Energy is another constraint, requiring flawless execution of the renewable transition, P3.
And the human capital risks seem absolutely central to this future vision.
They are perhaps the biggest vulnerability. The plan is highly susceptible to skill mismatch. If the lifelong education system, P2, fails to adapt quickly enough to the exponential speed of AI, biotech, and automation evolution, UP could end up with millions of graduates trained for yesterday's jobs, leading to mass unemployment and social frustration. The lifelong aspect has to really work continuously.
Other major risks.
Well,
external factors.
Yes. The plan is obviously exposed to global economic shocks, major recessions in key markets, rising protectionism disrupting trade flows, global supply chain disruptions like we saw during the pandemic. Any of these could halt the crucial FDI flows and export growth needed. And finally, there is the persistent governance risk. Can the state sustain transparent, accountable, efficient, and rights-respecting governance over 25 years, especially as the economy becomes more complex and decentralized? Any return to instability or widespread corruption could fatally undermine investor confidence and public trust. The initial muscular style might need to evolve significantly.
Conversely, let's flip that. What are the critical enablers, the things that absolutely must align perfectly for this $10 trillion goal to be even remotely plausible?
The sources identify several key enablers that need to fire on all cylinders. First, sustained political continuity and stability, coupled with highly capable, disciplined, and adaptable governance. Frequent changes in direction would be fatal. Second, massive capital mobilization, both domestic and foreign, on an unprecedented scale far beyond current levels. Third, the rapid human capital leap, P2, must succeed universally across regions and demographics. Fourth, large-scale, successful technology adoption across all sectors, not just importing tech, but integrating and innovating with it locally. And fifth, securing stable and growing global market access for UP's increasingly high-value exports.
So all 5 of those factors need to align near perfectly.
Pretty much. They all have to align and reinforce each other consistently over the next 2.5 decades for the $10 trillion goal to be achievable within the defined time frame. It's an incredibly high bar.
We've established pretty firmly that technology isn't just part of the plan. It's the core driver for this $10 trillion vision, and that education is the essential catalyst. So let's dedicate this final detailed segment to exploring the cutting edge of innovation expected and how it's specifically woven into UP's economic machinery over the next 25 years. This is where the 2050 vision truly separates itself from typical 5-year state planning exercises.
Absolutely. The plan seems predicated on anticipating and harnessing multiple waves of technological disruption. The current technological landscape dictates the starting line, of course. Today, the focus is on capitalizing on technologies that are already mature or rapidly scaling. Artificial intelligence, especially machine learning for prediction and optimization, early autonomous systems, moving from pilot projects in logistics or agriculture to broader deployment, advanced computing, accessing national supercomputing grids, maybe early exascale capabilities, pervasive IoT and edge computing for data collection, and breakthroughs we're seeing in biotechnology, like synthetic biology for agriculture or pharma, and advanced materials like graphene for energy storage or composites for manufacturing. And of course, sustainable technologies like solar, wind, and battery storage.
Okay, that's the baseline today. How does the plan project the evolution of these technologies by, say, 2050? And how will that specifically impact governance, and the economy in UP.
The sources outline an accelerating trajectory, assuming continued global progress. Let's break it down roughly by decade. By 2030, probably the most impactful change, widely felt, will be the broad deployment of agentic AI systems.
Agentic AI, what's that exactly? How is it different from the AI we have now?
Current AI is mostly analytical or predictive. Agentic AI takes the next step. These are AI systems that don't just process data or make recommendations. They can proactively initiate tasks, make real-time decisions within defined parameters, and manage complex systems autonomously with minimal human oversight.
Can you give an example in the UP context?
Sure. In UP's logistics network, Pathway 3, an agentic AI managing the statewide freight system could autonomously reroute thousands of trucks in real time based on live traffic data, weather forecasts, predicted port congestion, and changing inventory levels at destinations, all to maximize overall system efficiency and minimize fuel consumption without a human dispatcher intervening for each decision.
That's a huge leap in efficiency. What about governance?
In governance, you could see agentic AI systems managing the dynamic allocation of resources, perhaps adjusting power distribution on the smart grid based on real-time demand predictions, or even managing the flow of certain welfare benefits based on verifiable digital triggers, potentially reducing delays in human bias or error. Also, by 2030, we'll likely see quantum computing move from purely academic research towards early commercial applications in very specific areas, like materials science simulation for developing new catalysts relevant for P3, or complex optimization problems.
Okay, that concept of agentic AI making real-time autonomous decisions is a massive step forward, both exciting and maybe a little unnerving. What about the midterm? What does the tech landscape look like by 2040?
By 2040, the prediction is that we enter a phase of deep convergence between multiple powerful technologies. The silos break down. You'll see AI plus biotech plus advanced materials working together synergistically.
What would that look like?
For example, manufacturing P3 will likely be largely autonomous, highly customized, and geographically distributed, managed by sophisticated digital twins and adaptable robotic systems. New products might be designed using AI, fabricated from novel bio-based or advanced materials, discovered using quantum simulations perhaps, and produced on demand closer to the consumer. In health, P4 systems will likely integrate individual genomics data, lifestyle data from wearables, and predictive AI diagnostics to enable truly personalized prevention and treatment plans. And the large-scale deployment of those advanced materials, maybe perfected graphene or perovskites, could revolutionize the efficiency and cost of solar panels and battery storage, making the green energy goals P3 much more achievable.
And the final projected state in 2050, the culmination.
By 2050, the plan assumes the integration is near complete. Autonomous systems, leveraging ubiquitous, ultra-fast connectivity, maybe 6G or beyond, will likely manage vast portions of logistics, agriculture, think fully autonomous farms, and urban infrastructure services. Quantum and potentially neuromorphic computing might be powering large-scale economic modeling, resource allocation systems, and comprehensive public health platforms. The traditional industrial economy as we know it will have effectively morphed into a fully tech-driven, data-rich, resource-efficient, globally networked economy. It's a leap well beyond what we currently call Industry 4.0, moving into the territory sometimes labeled Industry 5.0 or 6.0, focusing on human-machine collaboration, sustainability, and resilience.
The scale of this technological transformation is structural and societal, not just economic. But you keep emphasizing, and the sources do too, that technology alone is insufficient. This brings us back again to that central argument for universal, lifelong education, Pathway 2. Why can't UP simply import the necessary technical expertise, buy the best AI, hire foreign consultants?
Because sustainable, long-term, high-value economic growth and innovation cannot be permanently outsourced. If a state or country relies solely on imported expertise and technology, it remains perpetually dependent on foreign intellectual property, expensive foreign skilled labor, and vulnerable to geopolitical shifts or technology transfer restrictions. It becomes a branch plant economy.
So to sustain that 14–15% CAGR needed for $10 trillion.
UP must become an innovator and creator of economic value, not just an assembler or consumer of technologies developed elsewhere. This requires a critical mass within its own population across that vast 240 million people who can not only operate these complex systems, but also absorb the knowledge, maintain the infrastructure, debug the code, adapt the technologies to local needs, and most importantly, innovate new products, services, and processes using these powerful tools. That capability has to be homegrown.
So the education system's primary goal must be instilling not just foundational literacy or specific job skills, but this capacity for constant adaptation and learning.
Absolutely. The sheer speed of technological change is the biggest challenge here. A specific coding language or machine operations skill learned today might be automated or rendered obsolete in 5 years, maybe even less. That's why the lifelong aspect of Pathway 2 is paramount. It ensures that the entire workforce has continuous, accessible, affordable mechanisms like that proposed UP Skills Cloud for retraining and upskilling throughout their careers. To pivot from, say, running a traditional factory line to managing a fleet of autonomous delivery robots, or from basic crop farming to becoming a certified carbon farming consultant.
And the universal aspect, why is it so critical that this reaches everyone, not just the urban elite?
Because leaving large segments of the population behind creates a crippling tech divide. It wastes immense human potential, exacerbates inequality, Pathway 5's concern, and ultimately limits the size of the domestic market and the talent pool for innovation. Universal digital literacy and access to lifelong learning are essential to ensure that the benefits of this tech-driven growth are broadly shared, fueling productivity across all sectors, from the farm to the factory to the service center, and creating the inclusive society needed for long-term stability.
Okay, let's connect this explicitly back to the transformation of daily working life and the different pathways we discussed. For agriculture, Pathway 1, how does this lifelong universal education vision enable the deep tech future for an average farmer in, say, 2040?
Right. An average farmer in UP in 2040, according to this vision, is essentially a data-driven farm manager or agri-entrepreneur, not just a manual laborer. They need the baseline digital literacy from P2's foundational efforts to comfortably use a smartphone or tablet interface to interpret the AI-generated advisories coming from the farm as platform system about soil health, climate risks, optimal planting dates, market prices. They need specific training, perhaps via the Skills Cloud, to effectively utilize advanced inputs like genetically optimized seeds or biofertilizers from P1's R&D. And they must understand the basic principles and documentation requirements of sustainable practices and carbon accounting to successfully participate in and benefit from the carbon credit markets. Education transforms their role from primarily physical labor to knowledge work, leveraging high-margin tools and data.
And for manufacturing and services, Pathway 3, how does education underpin the vision of autonomous factories and global service hubs?
Those advanced automated factories and sophisticated logistics networks require a constant pipeline of technicians and engineers proficient in robotics, programmable logic controllers, AI-driven quality control systems, cybersecurity, and managing those complex digital twins we talked about. The revamped vocational institutes and engineering colleges, P2, need to supply these skills. Crucially, Pathway 2 must also foster higher-level skills in process innovation, supply chain management, and R&D to enable local companies not just to operate imported tech, but to adapt it and develop proprietary solutions. For the digital services sector, continuous upskilling via the Skills Cloud and the latest data science techniques, AI ethics, cloud computing platforms, and cybersecurity threats is absolutely essential for UP's workforce to remain globally competitive against service hubs in other countries.
What about the profound changes expected in health and wellness? Pathway 4, how does education enable that?
The health systems are rapidly integrating AI diagnostics, telemedicine, and digital health records. So all healthcare workers, from frontline ESHA workers in villages to specialist doctors in cities, will need ongoing training via P2 mechanisms and digital health tools. They need to be comfortable interpreting AI-driven risk assessments, securely managing patient data in digital formats, effectively conducting remote consultations, and utilizing data from wearable sensors. Furthermore, the specialized biomanufacturing clusters and pharma parks require universities and skill centers to produce a highly specialized, ethically trained workforce in fields like bioinformatics, genomics, clinical trial management, and GMP, good manufacturing practice, standards for producing world-class medical products. That $1 trillion health sector vision relies entirely on this specialized human capital.
And finally, let's connect education back to the core goals of governance and inclusion, Pathway 5. How does it serve those aims in this high-tech future?
Education is absolutely key here for reducing social friction and enabling meaningful democratic participation in an increasingly complex, tech-mediated economy. Firstly, universal digital literacy is the bedrock, ensuring that rural and marginalized communities can fully access and benefit from digital government services, online markets, and welfare platforms, reducing leakage, corruption, and the digital divide. Secondly, and perhaps more profoundly, as powerful technologies like agentic AI become embedded in governance and daily life, raising complex ethical and legal questions about data privacy, algorithmic bias, and autonomous decision-making, the lifelong education system, P2, has a crucial role. It must inculcate not just technical skills, but also a broad understanding across the entire population of digital rights, data ethics, critical thinking about technology's impact, and the principles of accountable civic governance in the digital age. This builds a more resilient, informed society capable of navigating and shaping its high-tech future rather than just being passively subjected to it.
So the central thesis of this entire massive multi-decade blueprint seems crystal clear now. The $10 trillion vision isn't fundamentally about capital investment first or even technology first. It's about building human capability first, universally and continuously.
Precisely. That human capability then dictates the pace and success of technology adoption, which in turn attracts and effectively utilizes the necessary capital investment. If UP can successfully combine its unique advantages, its massive demographic scale, its apparently renewed governance structure, and its vast latent economic potential with aggressive, smart technology adoption powered by universal lifelong education that fosters adaptability and innovation,
then the formula might just work.
Then the analysis presented in these sources suggests it will possess a unique, powerful formula. Scale plus technology plus human capital plus inclusion plus connectivity. A formula that could potentially propel it towards that $10 trillion goal and make it a truly global economic powerhouse. Its success, if achieved, wouldn't just be an Indian success story. It would represent a potentially transformative and replicable blueprint for how any large, populous developing region can strive for exponential, inclusive growth in the complex technological landscape of the 21st century. #tag outro. So synthesizing this very deep dive, the transformation of Uttar Pradesh over the last 8 years or so has been undeniably profound. It's been a structural shift initiated by a strong centralized governance model that focused first and foremost on establishing security and building foundational infrastructure.
Right, that initial phase set the stage. And that progress, however controversial the methods for some, has clearly created the necessary momentum, the belief perhaps, for this truly ambitious next chapter, the $10 trillion vision for 2050.
And here's where it gets really interesting, as you said. The sources make it abundantly clear that this 25-year leap isn't conceived as just more incremental growth doing the same things better. It's envisioned as a total structural overhaul.
Fueled by this hyper-integration of technology across literally every sector, agriculture, manufacturing, services, health, governance. That 14–15% sustained key AGR they need demands nothing less than a complete societal redesign.
And that entire incredibly complex technology-dependent architecture hinges, ultimately, on one central pillar we kept returning to, the successful and truly universal implementation of lifelong education.
Pathway 2.
Pathway 2. That human capital leap is framed as the only way to ensure that 240 million citizens are equipped and continually re-equipped for a future increasingly driven by autonomous systems, pervasive AI, advanced biotech, and high-value knowledge-based industries, enabling them to move from just being consumers of data and technology to becoming creators and innovators with it.
Okay, so we've thoroughly examined the logic and the reported success of the law and order first approach, which the government argued was necessary to attract initial investment and stabilize a chaotic situation. But here's the final provocative thought for you, our listener, to consider. If this $10 trillion vision truly requires a workforce and society that is continually learning, adapting, challenging assumptions, and innovating creatively with powerful tools like agentic AI and advanced biotech, what kind of evolving governance mechanism is required?
That's the core tension, isn't it? What governance mechanism is needed to ensure that this rapid, tech-driven structural change is achieved, while simultaneously fostering the essential ingredients for that creativity and innovation, things like civil liberties, freedom of inquiry, open dialogue, robust legal protections for intellectual property and individual rights. The very things needed for a truly creative, educated, and rights-respecting society to flourish.
That is the ultimate balancing act facing Uttar Pradesh, it seems. Ensure the muscular, centralized governance style that initiated the change can successfully evolve
Evolve into a perhaps more decentralized, adaptive, inclusive, data-driven framework. One that fosters the bottom-up innovation and critical thinking absolutely required for sustained, high-value growth across all 5 pathways, while still maintaining stability and order. That question of achieving the critical balance between order and liberty, between centralized control and distributed innovation, is perhaps the ultimate metric by which the success or failure of Viksit UP 2047 will ultimately be measured, not just within India, but on the global stage.
A compelling and necessary thought for you to explore as you process the sheer magnitude of this deep dive. Thank you for joining us.